And we are live on Facebook. This concludes our New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation marathon today, starting out with Assemblyman Antoine McClellan, then our state senator in LD1, Michael Testa, and then the great former Assemblyman Michael Patrick Carroll. And batting cleanup tonight for us is our residential New Jersey Constitutional Republicans physician, Dr. Kathleen Ruddy. Doctor, thank you for joining me.
So I'm the closing pitcher, huh?
No, you're actually the cleanup hitter. You're in the lineup to drive in runs.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a hitter. You're the fourth hitter in the lineup, and that responsibility is driving in as many runs as possible.
Okay.
Normally, it's a power hitter, and of course, yeah, that's right. Of course, what the information you share with us is very powerful, so it's very appropriate that you would be joining us in the lead up and the cleanup spot today for our marathon.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm just great. Thank you.
Great. We have a lot to discuss, so we're going to get right to it. And I wanted to get your further insight, Doctor. The last time you joined us, which was the first time you've joined us, we talked about A3030 and S4848, which is the terribly misnamed Reproductive Freedom Act that Phil Murphy and the Democrats in New Jersey have been pushing in lieu of perhaps a reversal of Roe v. Wade. But you had suggested, and I firmly believe that you are correct, that one of the reasons, one of the impetus, if you will, behind the enthusiasm behind passing this bill, which women already have access to abortions in this state. It leads the nation in the number. It's up there and leading the nation in the number of abortions. But really the impetus is to provide, and this is a godless idea, of providing the body parts of aborted children in the harvesting business, which is very, very profitable. So I think that that word has been getting out, and it may have something to do with the stalling of this bill. What are your insights, further insights?
Well, S3030 and A4848 are fetal tissue harvesting development plans.
Yep.
They are marketed, in my opinion, by Planned Parenthood to further expand the supply chain of fetal tissue for fetal tissue research. Fetal tissue research has been co-opted under the term stem cell, because stem cell doesn't sound bad. As a matter of fact, stem cell has been promoted as a saving grace. But stem cell is really fetal tissue. There is an insatiable demand for fetal tissue. And the problem is that the premium for fetal tissue exists in the later months of pregnancy, when you can get organs, you can get a brain, you can get a heart. But the background against which this insatiable demand for mature fetal tissue exists is that there has been a severe reduction in the supply chain of fetal tissue, because 30 to 40% of abortions now take place at home as a result of medication. And because of aging demographics, the number of abortions in the country has decreased by 50%. So a 50% reduction in the number of pregnancies, a 30 to 40% reduction in the number of abortions equals no toilet paper on the shelves, a supply chain problem. Now, the National Institutes of Health in 2019, that's the most recent data I can get, spent $100 million on fetal tissue research. You need aborted tissue to do fetal tissue research. So the government has a dog in the fight. The FDA, the CDC, DARPA, Department of Defense, and the private drug and biotech industry spend, I don't know, $1 billion altogether. That's not a wild estimate So I believe, and this is not a exaggerated hypothesis, I believe that abortion has been co-opted by fetal tissue research, and fetal tissue research is marketed by Planned Parenthood as women's reproductive rights and so forth. It's a thinly veiled veneer to get hands on as much mature fetal tissue as possible. And one last statement before we go back to the questions. President Biden lifted the ban on federal funding of Planned Parenthood in foreign countries. So US tax dollars are being used to fund abortions in other countries because you can bring fetal tissue into this country through the US Customs Office, easy peasy, relieving the supply chain. So if you want to understand Governor Murphy's full-term abortion bill, you must understand what's driving it. This is a fetal tissue harvesting development plan, period, end of discussion.
Well, it's very, very, it's very disturbing, but it certainly seems to be the truth, Dr. Ruddy, and I appreciate you coming on with us once again, and again reiterating the truth behind the impetus, the motivation behind this disastrous, really we call it the reproductive kill bill. And of course, our God instituted the command to our first parents to be fruitful and multiply. That has never been abrogated. It still remains true today as it did in the Garden of Eden some 13,033 years ago. So what we want to talk about now, and we didn't get a chance the last conversation, is COVID-19, subsequential lockdowns, vaccination mandates, and so forth. But let me start by asking you a question, Doctor, and we certainly appreciate your knowledge because of your the work that you've done, especially in breast cancer, and being a physician of such high regard as you are. In your estimation, we know that COVID apparently came out of a lab in China, but in your estimation, do you think that COVID was biologically engineered, or was it an act of nature?
Well, I have a paper. There's a paper published in 2015 in Nature Medicine, in which the scientists from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Dana-Farber, Harvard, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, including the Batwoman, a Swiss Institute of Research that I was not familiar with. This work funded by the NIH, Dr. Fauci's branch, NIAID, AID. And in that paper, the scientists describe, define, and brag, if I may say, about their synthesis, their construction of a novel spike protein, which is the warhead, attached to a coronavirus, which is the missile. And they said, just in their abstract, this is what we did. And oh, by the way, it's very lethal. And they go on to describe how they made it lethal using human fetal tissue. And they say, oh, by the way, none of the vaccines that we tried were effective against it. None of the vaccines that we tried were effective against it. And none of the monoclonal antibodies we had were effective against it. Okay. Then they go on to say this, that, and the other, how they did it. And they used human lung tissue. They used human cancer tissue. They used mice whose immune systems had been stripped of their immune system, okay, irradiated out of existence, injected with human fetal immune systems so that they could see how dangerous their little monster was. And their monster was very dangerous. And they used special fetal tissue, which they acquired from a company in Ogden, Utah. And they said at the end of this paper, and this paper is still posted, although they changed it. I have the original paper I pulled off the internet, but they've changed it since then because it's quite a hot number. They said at the end, we know that there was a moratorium on this research. This is the gain of function. Let's see how bad we can make it in humans. That's gain of function. They said, we understand that there's a moratorium on this research, but we applied to Fauci's organization for an exemption. They got the exemption. You try and get an exemption to the vaccine. Let me know how that works out for you. But they got an exemption for gain of function research. Thanks, guys. We can't thank you enough. What a great job you did. The question is, was it released? And there are those, including a female Chinese scientist who has said publicly, she was there at the time talking with other Chinese scientists, and there are Chinese patriots who are alarmed at what their government has been doing. And she has said, they released it. They designed it as a bioweapon and they released it. And that was a platform for the next step, which were the rollout of the vaccines. This is what she has said. There are scientists around the world now, leaders, professors, chairmen of various departments of medicine and virology, who are now converging and coalescing around the conclusion that this was a specifically designed bioweapon, which was deliberately released so that further deliberately released bioweapons might be made effective to the entire world population. I think the majority opinion is that that's what's happening. And although it's the majority opinion of the silent majority because we've been censored, increasingly over the past, I would say several weeks really, there's been a mushroom cloud that's starting to form in mainstream mindsets that something's not right. This is not holding together. The center will not hold. This doesn't make sense. If these are vaccines, why are they not working? If you get a measles vaccine, do you have breakthrough in measles? If you have a polio vaccine, do you have a breakthrough in polio? No, you're immune. So the question is, well, if you got a vaccine, 3 months ago, and then you come down with COVID, doesn't sound like a very good vaccine. Well, maybe it's not a vaccine. That's the question. What is this?
Right.
What is this? And if it's supposed to work so well, then wouldn't you think that people would be happy to have it if it were safe and it were protective? Wouldn't you think that people would be happy to have it and you would not be forced to suspend the Constitution, suspend the Bill of Rights, violate the Nuremberg Code, and coerce people by saying you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your license to practice medicine, you're going to be pulled from the chairman of the Department of Cardiology. Yeah, because you're not getting a vaccine. If it really works that well, is that safe? Are you kidding me?
Right. Before we get into the vaccines, though, I've got a couple of steps that I want to take prior to that before we build up to that. But what you're saying is aligned exactly with what constitutional Republicans are thinking. But let me ask you this: do you think that the Delta variant, do you think that has been biologically engineered to increase the potency of COVID-19 and the spread of it onto those who weren't susceptible to to COVID-19 initially, like younger people and people who are in better health?
Okay, so I rely on experts for their opinion when that's not my specialty. So I'm a cancer surgeon. So if I needed to consult with a cardiologist on a patient, I was getting ready to operate on a patient, and she had a problem with her heart, I would consult with a cardiologist and I would trust the cardiologist's judgment. If he or she said, well, we need to do this, that, and the other, I'd be like, listen to her, okay? And then I'll operate, okay? So it would appear, based on my appreciation of experts, that we don't have any variants. Okay. What we have are talking point variants, which attempt to get you more worked up. Oh my God, another variant. You need a booster. Oh my God, lockdown, double masks, another variant. It's the Delta. Okay, so the virus certainly is mutating, but it's mutating in a way. Let me describe this for the women in the audience, and the men will appreciate this. If a woman is wearing a black dress, okay, and she wears pearl earrings, that's the alpha variant, okay? If she changes the earrings, she has hoop earrings, that's the Delta variant. It's still the same black dress, okay? The pearl earrings exchanged for the hoop earrings, then it doesn't really change. It's still the black dress. So these variants are really little snapshots of how you might accessorize this bioweapon with a spike protein as the warhead and the coronavirus as the missile delivery system. And it's a way to gin up the fear. And, you know, it works until you understand that she's just changed her earrings. It's the same black dress.
Yeah, well, that certainly makes it hits home, and we can definitely understand that. Now, I thought it was very curious, Doctor, from the very beginning, that the COVID-19 essentially gave the government an opportunity to take unprecedented liberties, if you will, in suspending the constitutional rights of specifically the right of assembly, the right of religious expression, the state of New Jersey, the unalienable right to obtain, possess, and secure one's own property, which not only is the real estate and the business that they may own, but also the money that they earn and keep and use to spend for their living. And what I thought was very curious right away is that we have thousands of years of knowledge, thousands of years of history shows us that God has created us with a great immune system, with the ability to fight and to contract against viruses. And we develop what is known as natural immunity. And the idea of a lockdown is the exact opposite of the idea of building up that in natural immunity. I saw a very interesting advertisement the other day. They were showing the attendance at some of the college football games, which was in the tens of thousands, 50 to 60,000. And it said, this is the best defense against COVID-19. It just shows a picture of a totally a stadium filled to capacity.
Right.
So shouldn't that have immediately raised a red flag to us that they wanted to lock us up under house arrest, essentially, as opposed to let the strong go out there and develop immunity that would eventually defeat COVID-19, the virus? Isn't that am I on the right track?
Let me tell you a little story. So my special area of interest and research was the breast cancer virus. And in 2010, was it? Yeah, 2010, Professor Vincent Tuohy at the Cleveland Clinic, who is an immunologist, created the first real preventive breast cancer vaccine. And I called him to congratulate him, and he and I, both Irish, we became fast friends immediately. And we would have conversations back and forth. And one day we were having a chat, and Vince said to me that the immune system has the ability to recognize a billion different foreign entities. Now think about this for a second. There are 7.8 billion people on the planet. It goes from 7.2 to whatever. There are over 7 billion people. If I sat you in front of a projector, a screen, and I started putting pictures of everybody's face, okay? Boom, 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 boom. How many faces would it take before you would be like, I don't know, have I seen that person before? Your own brain could not possibly, after about 10,000, you'd be like, have I seen her? Have I not seen her? Or whatever. Okay. Your immune system can recognize a billion different foreign entities. Okay. We can stop right there. Now, I was at a meeting with Morris County Patriots the other day, and it was a barn burner. Let me tell you what. We were there to talk about vaccines. One of the presenters, the first presenter, a guy who is from Cuba, quite a dynamic man from Cuba, got out and recognized what was happening here because he had seen it as a child in Cuba. He served in the military, paratrooper, military intelligence, retired, and so typical of the Cubans, and an industrialist. So he has a business here and he's got a farm out west and he's go, go, go. And he is worked up about preserving, protecting, and defending the Constitution. And he said something which is worth repeating. He said, they launch one thing so that they can launch another. Okay? So you develop the novel lethal bioweapon so you can launch the vaccine, so you can shut down the population, so you can inoculate them, shut them down again, shut down the economy, turn out the lights, pull the plug on fuel, pull the plug on food, send in the military, close the banks. I don't know. Now we're having some real fun. What do you say? Suspend the Constitution, suspend the Bill of Rights, control the media, censor everything. It's party time. Like, who thought this was a good idea?
It's totalitarian party time.
And there is, this was chilling. This was the most chilling. I have to tell you this. This was the most chilling moment besides another woman, Cuban, who at the age of 6 saw her family members and friends tortured. Okay. Yeah. As Batista leaving in front of her very eyes, Castro coming in, friends and relatives being tortured. Okay. And she stood up, she had a story to tell. This is really just an atrocity.
Dr. Ruddy,
yeah.
Dr. Ruddy, just let me get your input into the situation. Initially, once COVID started to show up in New Jersey, the science that was followed was terribly flawed. The miscalculations were innumerable. The idea that we were going to have so many patients that there wouldn't be any room in the hospital facilities, that was greatly exaggerated. The science that was followed was very inaccurate. And of course, it led to people who were elderly people being infected with COVID being put in the convalescent centers where there were people who were not affected. And this was a disastrous, provided a deadly effect on those healthy in the convalescent centers. And of course, this was pushed by the Murphy administration, pushed by Judith Prescicelli, who's the lady commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Health, who incidentally, I believe was a nurse, was never a practicing physician. It was a nurse, and yet she becomes essentially, doctor, the second most powerful person in the state of New Jersey last year. And we have her making a comment to our state senator that it is the job of the Department of Health to manage this COVID-19 process, or the subsequent actions taken to prevent COVID-19 infections. Yet they are the ones who are in charge, as opposed to our legislature, which our Constitution would give clear authority in making decisions on behalf of the public. So what are your thoughts on the woefully inaccurate science initially used to substantiate the COVID-19 lockdowns?
Okay, so that's just part. Go ahead. That's just part of the plan. Okay, that's just part of the plan. You got to control the media. You have to control the narrative. Okay, it's this. If as I say, this is what's going on, then of course you're going to have to lie to as many people as possible on the fly. Okay, now. The Constitution, the United States Constitution says all of the power in this government resides in the Congress. What has happened since
legislative
Professor George, 1941, and this makes sense. The Congress took on more work than it was capable of taking on, and so it then distributed the work to agencies that now believe that they're independent of the will of the people. So the Center for Disease Control believes that it has the authority to get involved with a contractual relationship between someone who owns a piece of property and someone who is leasing that piece of property, and says, you don't have to pay him what you owe him. Complete. The Center for Disease Control, no. The FDA, no. So we have created, kind of organically, because the government, central government, took on more than it could chew, bit off more than it could chew. So it's distributed this power, okay, these tasks, which are then power, CIA, NSA, pick your favorite intelligence agency. This is what we have now. These people thinking that they have the power. We, the people, that's the first line. The first line in the second paragraph, all of the power in this government belongs in Congress. We need to dust off the Constitution and get back to Congress. And I believe we need to revisit the word malfeasance. This is how we get rid of the people who have betrayed us, including judges. No exceptions. Malfeasance is you are in a position of authority and you are not fulfilling your obligations, and you know better. And you know better. A charge of malfeasance removes you from office. And if you're found guilty, you could be in a world of trouble and you're not going to get your pension. Francis Collins, who knows enough to leave town because he can see trouble coming, he's going to retire. Fauci's not going to retire. Malfeasance across the board. Dust it off, find an attorney, dig out the evidence. It's all over the place. And let's get going with malfeasance, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so you're making a lot of great points, and you talk about the Congress, Article 1, which of course deals with the legislative body, says all. The word is all. It means all legislative power.
Yeah.
And of course, we attribute that, we apply that to our state constitution, which says the very same thing in Article 5 of our Constitution.
Right.
That I'm sorry, Article 4 rather of our Constitution gives all legislative power. Now we know that these direct orders that have been given by the executive branch have had the force of law, which in themselves are unconstitutional, and they are not given any enumerated constitutional rights in which to oppose these executive orders. And now we see the fourth branch of government that doesn't exist within the Constitution, the administrative and bureaucratical state, which is the CDC and the New Jersey Department of Health, drive their powers. These were all ideas promoted by men like Frank Johnson Goodenow, by Herbert Crowley, by Woodrow Wilson, taken to a whole new level under FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who used, and we talk about the misapplication of using the word war against a pandemic or against the war on terror or the Cold War or the war on drugs. Now, war is specifically given, the responsibility of declaring war is given only to the Congress. But we've seen this gross expansion of executive powers utilizing and manipulating this word war. And we heard even Trump call it a war, and he was wrong. We're not a war against the pandemic. This all goes back, Doctor, and you're very familiar with the fact that this was a cursed world that we live on. God cursed that world because of the fall. And these things, God is in control of all things, and often we forget about the fact that that occurs. But if we did, we would understand the nature of natural immunity, that he gives us the capacity to fight off these pathogens naturally without the government mandating or intervening in everything that we do.
This country has a covenant with God.
Amen.
Okay? It was founded and framed around a covenant with God. In God we trust. One nation under God. Malfeasance. Let's go.
Well, Well, doctor, let's talk about now the vaccine mandates. And we've seen that there's no clear science showing that the vaccine, but you would think that they are, because the media has promoted the idea of the infallibility of these vaccines. However, we see reports that squeak out that show contrary. We see people dying from the vaccines. Now, in my personal instance, I have diabetes. I also have some high blood pressure issues. So I would be considered very vulnerable to COVID-19, although I choose not to get the vaccination because I don't believe, I've never had a vaccination except when I was a child for polio and for measles that was in the 3rd grade. But I've never had a vaccination since, and I don't want to put myself through any unnecessary discomfort of having to go through the residual side effects of a vaccination. I practice good hygiene. I wash my hands. I stay away from large numbers. I'm very, very conscientious, and I employ personal responsibility, and I'm accountable to doing what's right to take care of my own health. But the idea of mandating vaccinations for people in order to keep their work is very, very disturbing. We see it throughout the country. We see Joe Biden and the Democrats, Phil Murphy in New Jersey, practically telling people you must be vaccinated or else. What are your thoughts on the whole vaccination controversy?
No yellow stars, no going on the train, no going into the ovens.
Now, you certainly paint a brunt picture
Okay.
of
No
real,
yellow stars, no yellow stars.
right. And we already
No getting
see
on
what
the
you're saying.
train. Okay. Don't get
Right.
on the train. Don't go into the oven.
Right. And you're making a blunt point. And of course, we see people, and I've been have had people say, well, why aren't you vaccinated? What's wrong with you? You know, are you out of your mind? Well, I say, have you ever heard of natural immunity? It's worked for thousands of years, and we have a record. We have a scientific record that we can use to base that knowledge off of. What have you got with your vaccines?
Yeah,
The
this is what
science is still out on all that, and will be.
yes. So JR, this is what I think. You know, when Mao, he was brilliant. He was a little nothing, but he was smart. And he understood that if you could, yeah, Chairman Mao, if you could frighten the population, starve the population, arrange for the population, including members of families, to go at each other, you could then move in with your military in a martial law fashion and take control. It worked. It took them a while, but it worked. So rather than argue back and forth between somebody who thinks, well, the vaccine, you have to have a vaccine, it works, well, you know, and those who say, no, 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 pull back. Okay, let's look at the entire map, not just a little piece of it. The big map is biowarfare, not between citizens. They would love to have it be warfare between the citizens. We're not going to do that, okay? And we're not going to be violent. We're going to do this in the court of law. And oh, by the way, my recommendation is that we take these guys, those who betrayed our country, to Nuremberg. This is a global Holocaust. We need to take them to Nuremberg, Nuremberg 2. That's where we will try them. In the meantime, what people have to understand is that the United States is at war with a bunch of people, including the Chinese Communist Party and the people who are working with them, to destroy this country. And we will not be destroyed. Thank you very much for trying. You're going to Nuremberg.
Right, and it's right. And what you're talking about is a ruling elite class. It's made up of the owners of these corporations that benefit from these lockdowns at the expense of homegrown businesses, small businesses, family businesses.
Terrible.
You know, saying that one store can be open and one can't, that one worker is essential, the other one isn't. That you can purchase this product, but you can't purchase that product. I mean, these are all totalitarian examples of what has occurred. And what's very alarming, Doctor, and what I think our great challenge is as constitutional Republicans, is to show the people that approve. There are people that approve of the handling of this pandemic by Phil Murphy and the Democrats at the expense of their own constitutional liberties that many of them they're not even aware of, that they're abrogating, that they're being abrogated. So this is the challenge. Our challenge is to educate the people that, as the Constitution of New Jersey says, that all people are inherently free and independent, meaning that they have to make their own decisions, that they have to take care of their own bodies, that they have to take care of their own families, that they have to take care of their own selves, they have to get their own employment, and they have to maintain their own employment by what they do, as opposed to relying on the government and the state, which isn't interested in you as the person or the personality, but interested in what you do to benefit the state. And we see this thinking that is completely engulfed the thinking of the Democratic Party. And this idea, the whole COVID-19 dilemma has provided an opportunity to employ lockdownism. And we've talked to Jeffrey Tucker, the Brownstone Institute, and interestingly enough, Dr. the Barrington Declaration was a declaration of many physicians like yourself, stating their disapproval of the COVID-19 lockdowns, the infringements on liberties. Of course, we see that Phil Murphy, in his motto, saying that public health leads to economic success, really should be turned around. It's the economic health and the economic freedom that will lead to healthier living for the people, because those people, and I wanted to touch momentarily on the fact that the CDC was only initially endorsing their tests for the COVID, as opposed to allowing private enterprises, private laboratories that were much faster, much better equipped to get out the test kits quicker. We're told by the CDC they couldn't go do it. So this is an example of centralized management over the good of the local knowledge of the people who are in the trenches, doctors like yourself who are taking care of patients. Your advice, your input should have been listened to far more than the bureaucrats like Judith Prescicelli sitting at the head of the commission for the Department of Health of the state.
Murphy is an ex-Goldman Sachs banker. What Murphy means, in my opinion, when he says that good public health is good economic health, what he means is if we can kill 90% of the world population, then we'll be able to balance the books. We don't have to worry about the pensions. We don't have to worry about all these obligations, this, that, and the other. And that's going to be economic health for us. He's making a big mistake, because if he thinks he's going to be spared when the Chinese come to town, which they're not going to count, but if he thinks that he's going to be spared, check with Robespierre, okay? And let me know how that conversation goes. Because when you start to kill off the world population, which is this big plan, so you can balance the books, which is the big plan, so you can take control of all the farmland, then burn it to the ground so that no one can eat, and etc. What happens is what happened in the Old Testament with Gideon. The wonderful story of Gideon, okay? He had to take on the Midianites. He was like minding his own business out there in the sheep field. And God says, come with me. I'm going to give you 1,000 men. You're going to take down the Midianites. And he goes, you got the wrong guy. You must be my brother. He's big, okay? And God says, no, I want you. So here Midian goes off with, 1,000 men, okay? And God says to him, stop by the oasis there and let them refresh themselves, but watch what they do. And so the majority of them were like lounging in the shade and smoking cigars, and telling jokes. 300 of them were taking the water with their eyes on the horizon. And Gideon knew, those are the guys. That's SEAL Team 6. That's the 101st Airborne. Come with me. So they had nothing. So they go and they surround the Midianites, okay, like 1 million people and they're 300. And what do? They drop pots. They make a big noise. We the people. They made a big noise and they blew their trumpets. And then what happened, this is my point I'm trying to make, is the Midianites got scared and they started going after each other. If you don't think that Governor Murphy is going to go after Pelosi, who's going to go after Chairman Mao, who's going to go after Bill Gates, who's going to go after Christine Lagarde, get your popcorn and let's watch and see what happens with those guys. We're in the middle of a summer blockbuster movie, and it's getting interesting. And that's, I think, what's going on here. So that's what Governor Murphy means. Good health means good economic, health for him. Yeah, I don't think so.
And what we have to implore the people, our audience, Doctor, is that they can play a great role in the victory, and that will occur on November the 2nd. When they go to the polls, or if they have their ballots now to be voting for Republican representatives, voting Jack Ciattarelli in as our next governor, and all the subsequent local Republican representatives in your assembly and state Senate representatives voting Republican to make the Constitution relevant again in New Jersey. The Democrats believe power is centered in one man, which is essentially what monarchical government, which Woodrow Wilson was very, very attracted to. And of course, what FDR essentially presented to the executive branch and implemented. But the idea is that the powers in one man, and the founders understood this, needed to be split up into the different branches. And if people, the New Jersey citizens voting Republican, will reestablish the Constitution, which is the best mechanism by which to protect our natural rights of freedom, liberty, life, our ability to pursue our own happiness, the environment from which to do that, and to get government back on its real responsibilities, which is to protect the person and their property from crime and from criminals. And that should be the impetus of the behind government. And it was always the purpose of government. But what we need to tell the people, Doctor, is the fact that on November 2nd, all of us have a tremendous responsibility and a very powerful, we can implement a very, very practical, very powerful procedure in voting. And we need to vote Republican on November the 2nd across the board.
Let me just jump in. In all fairness, permission to argue, please, permission to argue. In all fairness, President Bush, was about as autocratic and dictatorial as they come, followed by
no
Obama.
Question.
This is not a question, and this Mao would love that we're arguing with the Democrats, and the Democrats are, this is not a question of party politics. We're at war with China and its friends, okay? My view is that if they stole the last election, they'll steal this one. Go and vote as if it were a real election. Do not be surprised if it appears to have been rigged again. Once again, if you want to contribute to the reconstitution of this great nation, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, all hands to the pumps. We need to take these people out of office. We need to remove them from their positions. Malfeasance, get them out of here. Go back to paper ballots, get rid of these voting machines, these screens, okay? And no matter what happens in November, we've got another election coming up where we will have paper ballots and validated IDs and signatures, and we'll be off to the races again. Thank you, Jesus.
Okay, Doctor, I want to, as we wrap up tonight's show, I'd like to talk about what will be the subject of our next show.
Yeah.
That, of course, is a very important book that you just recently released. Yeah. And we'll be discussing this in detail, our next meeting, our next conversation. And it's a book about the viability argument taken out of Roe v. Wade. Please give us just a little bit more insight into this important book that we're all going to want to read as constitutional Republicans who believe that the right of life, the inviolability of the life of the child, should be recognized by the Supreme Court and the Constitution, therefore, from the very moment of conception.
Right. So the Supreme Court, in accepting the Dobbs case for review, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization out of Mississippi, said very specifically, we don't want to hear you argue everything, okay, beginning with, First there was darkness, and then there was light. You're going to argue only one topic, and that's viability,
Yeah.
which tells me they understand that life begins at conception. They don't want to hear that. Okay. Everybody knows that. What they want is to have the question of viability be argued, hopefully, and dispensed with, so that the Supremes can be done with abortion and turf it back like a tennis ball at Wimbledon to the states. The
Yeah.
viability of Roe makes the case that viability is not an issue at all, that the viability of the fetus is no more separate from the life of the fetus, which begins at conception, than viability is for a wounded soldier on a battlefield, or someone who is dying of cancer, or someone who is on the ventilator in the ICU with COVID. Viability is a factor, it's an attribute that applies to the living human being from the moment of conception until they die. And it's an adjective that describes the potential for further life, viability. How much longer can you go? Okay. If a fetus is perfectly viable if you leave the child alone. If you pull a child out of the womb at 3 months, child's not going to be viable. If you nail a man to a cross and you come back in 3 hours, he's not going to be viable. If he's Jesus Christ, he's going to rise from the dead in 3 days. New Testament. If he's a soldier on the battlefield, he's been shot in the head, he's not viable. He's alive, he's not viable. So my argument, the viability of Roe, is that viability is not an argument. So we know, based on Blackman's opinion, and he was the one who wrote the opinion in the Roe case, he said, if you can figure out when life begins, check, we've done that. And you can sort through the question of viability, I believe I've done that. Then the unborn child becomes a citizen of the United States and is privileged with the rights of the Constitution. That's what the book is about. So please buy it, because if we can sell 20,000 copies, it automatically becomes a New York Times bestseller. And I would love for a book about abortion to be a #1 bestseller, just because.
Well, that's what we'll discuss next time, Doctor. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. We'll be discussing that book. I'll get with you probably sometime in November. We'll look over that book, and looking forward to that discussion. But I appreciate your time tonight and your insight and your input in all these things. We appreciate the great work that you're doing, and being our resident physician here for the Constitutional Republicans.
Thank you.
So you have a great night. And remember, let us remember, Dr. what Lincoln said. He said, liberty to all, and that means all.
Under God.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Have a good night.